Mira spent the night in complete darkness, listening to the alien drones circle her building. The humming sounds came and went as the machines searched every corner of the research station. She could hear them testing doors and windows, their scanners sweeping through walls like invisible fingers. By morning, the sounds had faded. Mira carefully climbed the basement stairs and peered through a crack in the door. The main laboratory looked empty, but she could see scorch marks where the drones had forced their way inside. Equipment was overturned and scattered across the floor. She waited another hour before entering the laboratory. Moving quietly, she surveyed the damage. The aliens had been thorough but not destructive. They seemed more interested in scanning than breaking things. Most of her equipment was still functional. Mira gathered supplies quickly. She filled containers with water and grabbed all the food she could carry. More importantly, she collected her research materials, soil samples, plant extracts, and chemical compounds she had been studying for months. She also took her portable scanner, a simple device that measured electromagnetic radiation. It was primitive compared to alien technology, but it might help her understand how their detection systems worked. Back in the basement, Mira set up a small workspace. She arranged her samples on a table and began testing them with her scanner. Each material gave different readings. Some absorbed radio waves, others reflected them, and a few seemed to scatter the signals in random directions. The work was slow and careful. Mira had to be quiet because drones still patrolled the area. Every few hours, she heard them passing. Overhead, their scanners swept the building again and again, searching for any sign of human life. On the second day, accident struck. Mira was reaching for a water bottle when her elbow knocked over a container of activated charcoal powder. The black dust exploded across the basement, covering everything in a thick layer of soot. Mira cursed quietly as she tried to clean up the mess. The charcoal powder stuck to her clothes and skin. No matter how much she brushed, the black soot remained. She looked like she had crawled through a coal mine. Just then, she heard the familiar humming sound. Another drone was approaching the building. Mira quickly turned off her equipment and hid behind some storage boxes. The blue scanning. Light appeared at the basement window. Mira held her breath as the light swept across the room. It passed over her hiding spot once, twice, then moved on. The drone hummed outside for several minutes before flying away. That was strange. Usually, the drones spent much longer scanning the building. This time, the machine seemed satisfied with a quick check. Mira wondered if her hiding spot was better than she thought. Over the next few hours, more drones came and went. Each time, they performed only brief scans before moving on. It was as if they could no longer detect anything interesting in the building. Mira began to suspect something important had happened. She examined herself carefully and noticed she was still covered in charcoal powder. The black soot clung too, her skin and clothes like a second layer. Could this simple material be affecting the alien scanners? She decided to test her theory. Using her portable scanner, Mira measured the electromagnetic signature of her own body. The readings were much weaker than normal. The charcoal powder seemed to be absorbing or scattering the energy patterns that the scanners detected. Excited but cautious, Mira began more detailed experiments. She tested different amounts of charcoal powder mixed with various other materials. Some combinations worked better than others. Activated charcoal mixed with wood ash gave the best results. The mixture absorbed electromagnetic radiation across multiple frequencies. To verify her discovery, Mira performed a dangerous test. She covered herself completely in the charcoal mixture and walked outside the building during daylight hours. A patrol drone was visible in the distance, its blue scanner light sweeping across the mountainside. Mira stood in the open, directly in the drone's path. The blue light passed over her location without stopping. The machine continued its patrol, as if she didn't exist. She was invisible to the most advanced detection technology in the galaxy. The implications were staggering. For 3 days, the Velkari had been searching for her with perfect confidence in their scanners. They believed their technology could find any human anywhere on Earth. But Mira had discovered a simple material that made their advanced systems useless. She rushed back to the basement and began documenting everything. She recorded the exact mixture ratios, application methods, and effectiveness ranges. This information could save humanity, but only if she could share it with other survivors. The research station had an old radio transmitter that the aliens had ignored. It was an antique compared to modern communication systems, but it still worked. Mira carefully assembled the equipment and began broadcasting on emergency frequencies. Her first attempts received no response. The airwaves seemed empty except for alien communications. But Mira persisted, broadcasting the same message every hour. Charcoal powder block scanners. Repeat, charcoal powder block scanners. On the 4th day, she got an answer. A weak voice crackled through the static. "This is June Parkin's soul. Did you say charcoal blocks their scanners?" Mira's heart raced. Another human had survived and was listening. She quickly explained her discovery, describing the mixture and application process. June asked detailed questions, clearly understanding the importance of what she had found. "I'm in the subway tunnels under Seoul," June said. "There are others with me. We've been moving through maintenance areas, but the drones keep finding us. If your charcoal idea works, we might have a chance." Mira gave him precise instructions for creating the mixture. Activated charcoal was available at many locations: water treatment plants, air filtration systems, even some medical facilities. Wood ash could be found anywhere there had been fires. The materials were common and easy to obtain. Over the next few days, more voices joined their radio network. Survivors from different cities and regions reported successful tests with the charcoal mixture. A woman named Hana Lee in Busan confirmed that the technique worked in urban environments. Others reported similar successes in rural areas. The network grew slowly but steadily. Survivors shared information about safe meeting places, supply sources, and alien patrol patterns. They began calling themselves ghost cells because they could move unseen by the Velkari scanners. Mira realized she had given humanity its first real advantage in the war. The aliens had superior technology, advanced weapons, and complete military dominance. But they had one critical weakness. They believed their scanners were perfect. The Velkari had conquered hundreds of worlds using the same detection technology. They had never encountered materials that could interfere with their systems. Earth's sapo. Carbon-based chemistry was creating blind spots in their surveillance network. As more humans learned the charcoal technique, reports began filtering in about successful raids and rescues. Small groups were attacking alien supply depots and freeing captured humans. The ghost cells were becoming a real resistance movement, but Mira knew this was only the beginning. The aliens would eventually realize that humans were finding ways to avoid detection. When that happened, the Velkari would adapt their tactics. The resistance had to grow quickly and strike hard before the enemy learned about their new vulnerability. From her hidden basement laboratory, Dr. Mira Kim had sparked a revolution. Armed with nothing but soil science and activated charcoal, she had turned invisible humans into humanity's secret weapon against an empire that had never known defeat. The war was just beginning, but for the first time since the invasion, humans had hope. The silver ships came without warning. They appeared in Earth's sky like giant teardrops, silent and gleaming in the morning sun. Mira Kim watched from her laboratory window as the news reports flooded in from around the world. Seoul, Tokyo, New York, London. Every major city now had these mysterious craft hovering overhead. Mira worked alone at a small research station hidden in the mountains of South Korea. She studied soil samples and plant chemicals for a living. The facility was old and simple, with basic equipment and no fancy technology. Most days she felt forgotten by the world. Today she wished she could disappear completely. The aliens called themselves the Velkari Empire. They spoke perfect human languages through their ship's speakers. Their message was simple and terrifying. Earth now belonged to them. Humans would be relocated to processing centers. Resistance was impossible because they could detect every living being on the planet. Mira watched the demonstrations on her small television. The aliens released floating devices from their ships. These scanner drones moved through cities like metal jellyfish, their blue lights sweeping back and forth. Wherever the lights touched, they found people. Hidden in basements, locked in vaults, buried in tunnels. Nothing could hide from the Velkari scanners. The scanners worked by reading what the aliens called life signatures. Every living thing gave off special energy patterns. Humans had their own unique pattern that the machines could detect from very far away. The Velkari had used this technology to conquer hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. Within hours, leaders were surrendering. The President of the United States spoke on television with an alien standing beside him. The creature looked almost human, but with pale gray skin and large black eyes. It was thin and tall, wearing a smooth silver uniform. When it spoke, its voice sounded like music, but the words were cold. "Your species will be relocated to better serve the Empire," the alien said. "Our scanners have mapped every human settlement. Hiding is pointless. Resistance will only cause suffering." Mira turned off the television and sat in silence. Through her window, she could see scanner drones moving across the distant valleys. Their lights swept the mountainsides like searchlights. They were getting closer. She grabbed her emergency backpack and headed for the basement. The research station had an old bomb shelter from decades ago. It had thick concrete walls and was stocked with food and water. Mira hoped it might block the alien scanners, at least for a while. The basement was dark and musty. Mira used a flashlight to navigate between old equipment and storage boxes. She found the shelter entrance behind a heavy metal door. Inside, she set up a small radio and tried to contact the outside world. The news was getting worse. Cities were emptying as people were loaded onto alien transport ships. The lucky ones went quietly. Others tried to run or fight, but the scanners always found them. Military bases fell without firing a shot. How could you fight an enemy that always knew where you were? Mira tried calling her family in Seoul, but the phone lines were dead. She attempted to reach other research stations, but got only static. The Velkari were cutting off all communication between humans. They wanted people isolated and afraid. Hours passed. The scanner drones came closer to her mountain. Through the small basement window, Mira could see their blue lights moving through the forest. They moved in a grid pattern, covering every inch of ground. Soon they would reach her building. She turned off her radio and flashlight. Maybe in complete darkness and silence, the scanners might miss her. It was a desperate hope. But she had nothing else. The first drone reached the research station just after sunset. Mira heard its humming sound through the concrete walls. The blue light swept past the basement window. She held her breath and tried not to move. The light returned. It stayed longer this time, scanning the building more carefully. Mira could hear the drone moving around the structure above her. Its sensors were reading everything: the building, materials, the equipment inside, and searching for any sign of human life. Then the light went out. The humming faded as the drone moved away. Mira waited in the darkness, afraid to believe she was safe. Maybe the thick concrete walls had blocked the scanner after all. But her relief was short-lived. More drones arrived the next morning. These were larger and more advanced. They landed around the research station and began detailed scans. Mira could hear them outside, their mechanical sounds echoing through the mountain air. She knew it was only a matter of time. The Velkari scanners had found humans hiding in lead-lined bunkers, underground mines, and deep ocean trenches. Her concrete basement would not protect her for long. Mira thought about her life's work. She had spent years studying how different materials absorbed and reflected energy. Plant fibers, soil minerals, organic compounds. She understood how they interacted with electromagnetic radiation. Maybe there was something in her research that could help. She quietly searched through her equipment in the dark. Most of her tools were upstairs in the main laboratory, but she kept some basic supplies in the basement. Chemical samples, testing kits, measurement devices, simple things that probably meant nothing to the aliens above. The scanner sounds grew louder. The drones were getting impatient. Soon they would break into the building and search room by room. Mira had maybe an hour before they found her. She opened her emergency backpack and inventoried what she had. Food, water, basic medical supplies, and a small sample case containing various soil and plant specimens. Nothing that seemed useful against advanced alien technology. But as Mira examined the samples, she remembered something. Last week, she had been testing how different materials affected radio signals. Some substances blocked electromagnetic waves while others absorbed them. It was basic physics, but maybe the aliens didn't know about Earth's unique materials. The Valkyrie had conquered many worlds, but each planet was different. Earth had carbon-based life and unusual mineral compositions. Maybe their scanners were designed for other types of worlds. Maybe they had never encountered materials that could interfere with their detection systems. It was a desperate thought, but Mira clung to it. She was a scientist, not a soldier. If she was going to survive, it would be through knowledge, not weapons. She opened her sample case and began to plan. Outside, the alien drones continued their methodical search. They had all the time in the world. The Valkyrie Empire was patient and thorough. They had perfected the art of conquest through technology and fear, but they had never met Dr. Mira Kim. They had never encountered a human who understood both alien technology and Earth science. They thought their scanners were perfect, but Mira was about to prove them wrong. She just didn't know it yet. The massive Valkyrie command ship hung in the sky above Seoul like a silver mountain. For weeks, it had been the symbol of alien dominance, untouchable, impregnable, and filled with the technology that controlled Earth's conquest. Today, Mira, Kim and her assault team would prove that even the enemy's greatest stronghold could fall to humans covered in charcoal and ash. Final equipment check, Mira whispered to her team as they prepared for the most dangerous mission in human history. 50 Ghost Cell veterans surrounded her in the abandoned subway tunnel, each one covered in the carbon mixture that had made their victory possible. These were the best fighters from all the resistance cells, experts in infiltration, sabotage, and alien technology. "Signal jammers are ready," reported Tae Kim, adjusting the portable devices that would disrupt alien communications inside the ship. "We'll have maybe 30 minutes before they can call for help." "Explosive charges confirmed," added Sun Yu, checking the alien demolition devices they had captured and modified. "Enough firepower to cripple their main systems from the inside." The plan was audacious in its simplicity. While the command ship's attention was focused on coordinating responses to resistance activities across the region, a small team would infiltrate the vessel directly. They would disable critical systems, capture the alien commander, and force the Valkyrie to abandon Earth entirely. Intelligence gathered from previous operations had revealed the ship's internal layout and security systems. Like all alien technology, the defenses relied completely on scanner detection. Guards posted throughout the vessel monitored computer displays that showed the location of every life form aboard. But those same scanners were blind to humans covered in charcoal. "Transport approaching from the north," reported June Park from his observation post. A small alien cargo vessel was descending toward the command ship's docking bay, following the same route that supply ships had used for weeks, right on schedule. The Resistance had been tracking alien supply operations for days, waiting for the perfect opportunity to infiltrate the command ship. The cargo vessel would dock automatically, guided by the ship's computer systems. During the brief window when the docking bay was open, the assault team would slip inside undetected. Mira led her team through the drainage tunnels that ran beneath Sol's destroyed streets. Above them, the city remained largely empty, except for alien patrols and automated surveillance systems. Most of the human population had been evacuated to safe zones or was hiding in shielded areas. They emerged from a storm drain directly beneath the command ship's hovering position. The vessel was enormous, over 1 kilometer long and hundreds of meters wide. Its smooth hull reflected the morning sun like polished metal, showing no obvious entry points or weapon systems. "Grappling equipment ready," reported Hana Lee, who had designed the climbing system they would use to reach the ship. "We have 10 minutes before the supply vessel docks." Using alien technology modified with human engineering, the team launched nearly invisible climbing cables toward the command ship's underside. The cables attached to the hull with magnetic grips that were too small for alien sensors to detect. One by one, the ghost cell fighters began ascending toward their target. The climb took 8 minutes of careful movement up the swaying cables. Each fighter carried full combat equipment while maintaining perfect silence. Below them, Sol spread out like a map, showing the devastation that alien occupation had brought to one of Earth's greatest cities. They reached the docking bay just as the supply vessel completed its automatic approach. The bay doors opened to receive the cargo ship, creating a brief gap in the command ship's hull defenses. The assault team slipped inside during the 30 seconds when the bay was transitioning between sealed and open states. Inside, they found a cavernous space filled with supply containers and maintenance equipment. Alien crew members moved about their duties with the casual efficiency of people who had never experienced combat aboard their own ship. They paid no attention to the empty spaces where ghost cell fighters crouched in shadows. "Internal scanners are active," whispered Kayung, monitoring alien security systems with captured detection equipment. "But they're showing normal readings. We're completely invisible to their surveillance." The assault team split into 3 groups, each with specific objectives. Mira led the command team toward the ship's control center. June took the sabotage team to the main power systems. Sun Yu's demolition team headed for the scanner arrays that controlled alien surveillance across the region. Moving through the ship was like walking through a technological cathedral. Corridors were lined with systems that humans barely understood. Gravity generators, atmosphere processors, and quantum communication arrays operated silently around them. The Velkari had built their vessel as both warship and mobile command center. But for all their advanced technology, the aliens had made a critical error. They had become so dependent on their scanners that they no longer posted visual guards or used physical security measures. Doors were controlled by automated systems that opened for authorized personnel and saw no one when charcoal covered. Humans passed through. "Engineering section secured," reported June as his team reached the power core area. "Beginning placement of charges on primary energy systems." "Scanner control accessed," came Sun Yu's voice. "We can shut down their surveillance network across the entire region from here." Mira's team encountered their first real resistance as they approached the command center. Alien guards were posted at the entrance, armed with energy weapons and wearing protective armor. But like their colleagues throughout the ship, they relied completely on scanner data to identify threats. The guards watched their displays carefully, monitoring for any sign of intruders. Those same displays showed empty corridors where ghost cell fighters moved freely. When Mira walked directly past the first guard, he continued staring at his scanner screen, seeing nothing unusual. The command center itself was vast and impressive. Banks of computers processed information from across the occupied planet. Holographic displays showed the status of alien operations in every major city. At the center of it all sat the Velkari commander, a tall figure in elaborate uniform who radiated authority and confidence. Commander Zethkar had conquered 17 worlds for the Empire. His perfect record of victories had made him one of the most respected military leaders in Velkari history. He had never experienced defeat or even significant resistance. Earth was supposed to be just another routine conquest. Now he sat surrounded by reports of impossible human activities. His forces were being attacked by enemies that didn't appear on scanners. Supply lines were disrupted by invisible saboteurs. Entire installations had been destroyed by forces that vanished without trace. Regional command reports another facility destroyed, announced one of his subordinates. Scanner readings show no human activity in the area, but the damage is extensive. How? Can primitives attack our installations without being detected? Demanded another officer. Either our equipment is failing or these humans have capabilities we don't understand. Commander Zethkar studied the tactical displays with growing frustration. His scanners showed scattered human populations hiding in various locations, but none near the sites of recent attacks. Either the intelligence was wrong or the humans had developed technology that interfered with Velkari sensors. Increase patrol frequency in all sectors, he ordered. Deploy additional scanner drones to verify population locations. I want explanations for these discrepancies. What the commander couldn't see was Mira Kim standing 3 meters behind his command chair, listening to every word. Her charcoal-covered form was completely invisible to the alien sensors that protected the most important person on the planet. Teams report ready, came the whispered voices in her earpiece. June had placed explosive charges throughout the ship's engineering sections. Sun Yu had gained control of the surveillance systems. Tae Kim's jammers were prepared to cut off all communications. Mira drew the alien weapon she had captured weeks ago. It was a simple energy pistol, designed for close-range combat. More importantly, it would work regardless of who fired it. Alien technology might be advanced, but a weapon was still a weapon. Execute Phase 1, she whispered into her radio. Throughout the command ship, ghost cell fighters began their simultaneous assault. Explosive charges detonated in the engineering sections, cutting power to major systems. The surveillance network went offline as Sun Yu's team shut down scanner arrays. Communication jammers activated, isolating the ship from external contact. In the command center, chaos erupted as displays went dark and alarm systems began sounding. Alien officers rushed to their stations, trying to understand what was happening to their invincible ship. Their scanners showed no intruders, no attacking forces, nothing that could explain the systematic destruction occurring around them. Commander Zethkar rose from his chair, his authority shaken by the impossible situation. "Status report. What is attacking us?" That was when Mira stepped out of the shadows and pressed the energy pistol against the back of his head. "Hello, Commander," she said calmly. "I'm Dr. Mira Kim of Earth. We need to talk." The alien commander froze in disbelief. His most advanced sensors showed empty space where a human voice was. The signal came at exactly midnight across all resistance frequencies. "Operation Ghost Strike is go. All teams proceed to designated targets." Across the Korean peninsula and beyond, hundreds of Ghost Cell teams began moving toward their objectives. The largest coordinated resistance operation in human history was about to begin. After weeks of deception and sabotage, it was time for a direct assault on Velkari control. June Park led the primary assault team toward the main processing center outside Seoul. 50 Ghost Cell fighters moved through the darkness, their charcoal-covered, forms invisible to alien scanners. Each person carried improvised weapons, captured alien equipment, and enough explosive devices to level a city block. "Perimeter teams, report status," June whispered into his radio as they approached the facility. "North, team in position," came Daesong's voice from the opposite side of the complex. His mechanics had positioned signal jammers around the facility to interfere with alien communications. "Scanner disruption is active." "South team ready," reported Sun Yu. Her demolitions experts had spent days studying the facility's structure and identifying critical weak points. "Charges are set on primary power systems." The processing center was one of the largest Velkari installations in the region. Intelligence suggested it held over 1,000 captured humans and served as a central command node for alien operations throughout the area. Taking it would free many prisoners and deal a devastating blow to the occupation force. But this facility was just one of dozens being attacked simultaneously. In Busan, Hana Lee's team was assaulting an alien communication hub. Young Bin Cho's fighters were striking a scanner manufacturing facility in Daegu. Similar operations were occurring in Japan, China, and other countries where resistance networks had developed. The coordinated timing was crucial. The aliens had begun to adapt to Ghost Cell activities, increasing security and changing patrol patterns. But their responses were still based on tracking individual incidents rather than anticipating large-scale operations. A simultaneous strike across multiple targets would overwhelm their ability to respond effectively. "All teams, begin phase 1, June commanded. Across the region, resistance fighters began their assault. The first targets were always alien surveillance systems. Scanner arrays, communication towers, and sensor networks were destroyed or disabled using captured alien explosives. Within minutes, the Velkari lost their eyes and ears across hundreds of square kilometers. At the Seoul Processing Center, Sun Yu's charges detonated precisely as planned. The facility's main power grid went down, plunging the complex into darkness. Emergency systems activated, but they were immediately jammed by Daesong's signal interference equipment. "Phase 2, go," June ordered. The assault teams moved into the facility through multiple entry points. Ghost Cell fighters appeared in corridors and control rooms like black phantoms, striking before alien guards could respond. The defenders were completely unprepared for enemies they couldn't detect or track. The human prisoners were held in a series of containment buildings at the center of the complex. June's team fought their way through automated security systems and confused alien guards. The charcoal camouflage that made them invisible to scanners also helped them blend with shadows and debris inside the darkened facility. "Prisoner compound secured," reported his second-in-command as they reached the containment area. Inside, they found hundreds of humans in various states of health and fear. Many had been captured weeks ago and given up hope of rescue. "We're here to get you out," June announced to the prisoners as his team began breaking locks and disabling restraint devices. "Stay calm and follow our instructions exactly." The evacuation process had been planned in detail. Each freed prisoner was quickly covered with charcoal mixture and assigned to an escort team. They would be moved through carefully mapped routes to shielded safe zones where they could recover and join the resistance if they chose. Meanwhile, other assault teams were fighting their way to the facility's command center. The aliens had barricaded themselves inside, but their defensive preparations assumed they could track attacking forces with scanners. Against invisible enemies, their tactical advantages disappeared. "Command center is ours," reported Kyung after her team successfully breached the central control room. Inside, they found banks of computers and communication equipment that controlled alien operations across the entire region. "Beginning data download now." The captured intelligence was invaluable. Personnel records, operational plans, supply, schedules, and command structures, everything needed to understand and disrupt the alien occupation. But even more important was the psychological impact of the successful assault. Similar reports were coming in from other battlefields. In Busan, Hana Lee's team had successfully destroyed the primary communication hub, cutting off alien units from their regional command. Young Bin Cho's attack on the scanner facility had eliminated the enemy's ability to produce replacement surveillance equipment. "Incheon Manufacturing Center is down," reported another team leader. "We've destroyed their main supply depot and captured 2 transport vehicles." The pattern repeated across the region. Ghost cell teams struck simultaneously at dozens of targets, overwhelming alien defenders who couldn't coordinate their response without functional communication systems. The resistance was winning victories that had seemed impossible just weeks earlier. But the aliens were not passive victims. As the scale of the attacks became clear, Velkari commanders began implementing emergency protocols. Military units that had been scattered across the region were ordered to consolidate at heavily fortified positions. Air support was called in to deal with what appeared to be massive human uprisings. "Enemy reinforcements incoming from the west," warned one of June's scouts as they prepared to evacuate the processing center. "Looks like a full military response." The resistance had expected this. The simultaneous attacks were designed to provoke exactly this kind of response. By drawing alien forces into the open, the ghost cells could exploit their greatest tactical advantage, the ability to disappear completely when direct confrontation became disadvantageous. "All teams, begin Phase 3, June commanded. "Execute withdrawal protocols." Across the battlefield, resistance fighters began vanishing from their attack positions. Explosive charges covered their retreat, while signal generators created false electromagnetic signatures to confuse pursuing forces. Within minutes, the ghost cells had melted away into the darkness. The arriving alien reinforcements found empty facilities and no trace of attacking forces. Their scanners detected no human life signatures in areas where major battles had clearly occurred. Equipment was destroyed, prisoners were missing, and defensive positions were abandoned. But the attackers had simply vanished. This disappearing act was repeated at every battle site. Alien forces would arrive expecting to engage large human military units, only to find empty buildings and electronic ghosts. Their overwhelming firepower was useless against enemies who were no longer present. The psychological effect was devastating. Velkhari soldiers who had never experienced tactical uncertainty found themselves fighting an enemy that could appear and disappear at will. Reports flooded into command centers describing successful human attacks, followed by complete evacuation with no trace of the attacking forces. Regional Command is requesting immediate reinforcements, reported young Ben after intercepting alien communications. They're describing the attacks as impossible and inconsistent with known human capabilities. The success exceeded all resistance expectations. Not only had they achieved their operational objectives, but they had fundamentally shaken alien confidence in their ability to control human populations. The Velkhari were beginning to realize they were fighting an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. But perhaps the most important victory was the liberation of human prisoners. Thousands of people who had been destined for alien facilities were now free and hidden in shielded safe zones. Each rescue operation not only saved lives but added potential recruits to the resistance movement. Casualty report, June requested as the evacuation operations concluded. Minimal losses across all teams, came the response. We lost maybe a dozen fighters total, while freeing over 3,000 prisoners and destroying major enemy installations. The statistics were remarkable. In a single coordinated operation, the resistance had dealt more damage to the alien occupation than in all previous activities combined. More importantly, they had proven that humans could challenge Velkhari control directly and win. As dawn broke over the Korean peninsula, the full scale of the operation became clear. Alien communication networks were in chaos. Major installations lay in ruins. Thousands of prisoners had vanished without trace, and the attacking forces had completely disappeared, leaving no targets for retaliation. Standing in a safe zone outside, Seoul, surrounded by rescued humans and victorious ghost cell fighters, June Park reflected on how completely the situation had changed. 4 weeks ago, the Velkhari Empire had seemed invincible. Their technology was superior, their forces overwhelming, and their victory inevitable. Now those same aliens were retreating to fortified positions, afraid to patrol areas where invisible enemies might strike without warning. Tae Kim crouched behind a bank of alien communication equipment in the abandoned broadcast center. Around him, cables and wires connected captured Velkhari technology to human radio systems. The improvised setup looked chaotic, but it represented the most sophisticated deception operation in human history. "Are you ready to begin the transmission?" asked Sun Yu. a demolitions expert who had helped capture the equipment. Her face was covered in charcoal like everyone else, but her eyes gleamed with anticipation. Today's operation would either cripple the alien occupation or expose the resistance to devastating retaliation. Ty had been a broadcast engineer before the invasion, managing radio and television systems across Seoul. Now he was using that knowledge to hijack the Velkari communication network. The plan was ambitious and dangerous. They would feed false information directly into alien command systems, creating confusion on a scale never attempted before. Signal generators are active in all target zones, reported Min, monitoring communications from multiple ghost cell teams across the city. We have phantom populations showing up in Gangnam, Itaewon, and Hongdae. The aliens are already dispatching patrol units to investigate. The false signals were just the beginning. Over the past 2 weeks, resistance teams had positioned electromagnetic transmitters throughout Seoul and surrounding areas. Each device generated fake human life signatures that appeared genuine to Velkari scanners. To alien observers, it looked like massive populations of humans had suddenly appeared in previously empty districts. But the real deception was much more complex. Using knowledge gained from captured alien technology, the Resistance had learned to modify scanner data in real time. They could make populations appear or disappear, create false movement patterns, and even simulate specific individuals. Phase 2 is ready, announced Kyung from her position at the main control station. She had become expert at manipulating alien software systems, turning their own technology against them. We can now override scanner reports throughout the greater Seoul area. The operation had 3 main objectives. First, draw alien forces away from areas where real resistance activities were occurring. Second, convince the Velkari that human populations were hiding in remote or heavily defended locations. Third, create such massive confusion that the alien command structure would begin to break down. At the same time, hundreds of kilometers away, Hana Lee was coordinating similar operations from her base in Busan. Her team had focused on creating dark zones, areas where scanner signals were completely blocked or absorbed. Using large-scale applications of the charcoal mixture, they had made entire neighborhoods invisible to alien surveillance. Industrial Complex 7 is now completely shielded, reported one of her technicians. We've coated every surface with carbon compounds and installed signal absorbers throughout the area. Alien scanners show it as empty space. These dark zones served as safe havens where rescued humans could hide, and resistance operations could be planned without fear of detection. More importantly, they allowed the ghost cells to evacuate people from cities while making it appear that populations remained in place. The evacuation operation was coordinated by young Bin Cho from his command center in the abandoned high school. His intelligence network had identified thousands of humans still hiding in Seoul and other major cities. Moving them to safety required careful timing and extensive deception. Transport Team 7 has reached the pickup point, reported one of his coordinators. 50 civilians are ready for evacuation to Dark Zone 3. The civilians were quickly covered with charcoal mixture and led through carefully planned routes to shielded areas outside the city. Meanwhile, signal generators at their former hiding places continued to broadcast fake life signatures, making it appear that they were still present. From the alien perspective, the situation was becoming increasingly impossible to understand. Scanner data showed massive human populations in some areas and complete emptiness in others. Patrol units sent to investigate would find abandoned buildings or false signals, while areas that appeared empty on scanners sometimes contained obvious signs of human activity. The confusion was amplified by Sun Yu's sabotage operations. Her teams had learned to destroy scanner equipment in ways that looked like technical failures rather than deliberate attacks. Patrol drones would malfunction and crash. Communication arrays would develop mysterious signal interference. Detection. Grids would go offline for unexplained reasons. "Scanner Station 12 is down," she reported with satisfaction, after triggering explosives inside a Velkari surveillance post. "It will look like an overload in their power systems. They'll waste days trying to find the technical problem." The cumulative effect was devastating to alien operations. Velkari commanders found themselves operating with incomplete and contradictory information. Units would be ordered to investigate scanner contacts that turned out to be false. Resources were wasted chasing phantom populations that existed only in computer systems. The psychological impact on individual Velkari soldiers was even more significant. Many had never experienced equipment failures or unreliable intelligence. Some began questioning their own perceptions when patrol reports contradicted scanner data. Others requested transfers away from areas with frequent technical problems. Regional command centers attempted to compensate by increasing patrol frequency and expanding surveillance coverage. But this only made the situation worse. More patrols meant more false alarms, more equipment failures, and more contradictory reports. The alien command structure began to overwhelm itself with useless information. "They're requesting technical support from their homeworld," reported June Park after intercepting communications from the primary Velkari base. "Local commanders are claiming massive equipment failures across multiple systems." This development presented new opportunities for the resistance. If the aliens believed their problems were technical rather than the result of human action, they would focus on fixing equipment rather than changing tactics. The ghost cells could continue their deception operations while the enemy wasted time on irrelevant solutions. The deception campaign reached its peak during what the resistance called Day of Ghosts. Coordinated operations across multiple countries created the appearance of massive human uprisings in dozens of major cities. Signal generators made it seem like millions of people were emerging from hiding simultaneously. Alien forces responded with panic. Patrol units were dispatched to every reported location. Air support was called in to deal with apparent large-scale resistance activities. Command centers went to maximum alert status as reports flooded in from around the world. But when the patrol units arrived, they found nothing. Empty buildings, abandoned streets, and silent districts where scanners insisted thousands of humans were gathered. Some locations showed intense electromagnetic activity, but contained only small electronic devices hidden in basements or rooftops. The confusion spread beyond individual units to affect entire regional commands. Officers who had never questioned their surveillance technology began demanding explanations from subordinates. Technical teams reported finding no problems with equipment that clearly wasn't working correctly. Some Velkari commanders began to suspect sabotage from within their own ranks. How else could surveillance systems fail so systematically while showing no signs of damage or interference? Internal investigations began consuming resources and creating suspicion between different alien units. Meanwhile, the real resistance operations proceeded with complete success. While alien forces chased phantoms across empty cities, ghost cells evacuated thousands of humans to safety. Processing centers were raided and supply depots were looted. Communication facilities were sabotaged and transportation hubs were disrupted. The aliens were fighting an enemy that existed primarily in their own surveillance systems. Every response they made to apparent human activities only created more confusion and false information. Their own technology had become a weapon turned against them. Evacuation operations are 60% complete, reported young Bin during a strategy conference that included all major resistance leaders. We've moved over 10,000 civilians to shielded zones while maintaining the appearance of stable populations in all major cities. The success exceeded all expectations. Not only were they saving human lives, but they were completely disrupting alien operations throughout the region. The Velkari occupation force was beginning to collapse under the weight of its own confusion, but the resistance leaders knew they couldn't maintain this level of deception indefinitely. Eventually, the aliens would realize they were being systematically deceived and would adapt their tactics accordingly. The ghost cells needed to use their current advantage to prepare for the next phase of the war. "We've proven that we can manipulate their perceptions," said Mira during the same conference. "Now we need to use that capability to set up conditions for a decisive victory." The Great Deception had accomplished more than just tactical success. It had fundamentally altered the balance of the war by destroying Velkari confidence in their most important advantage. An empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds through technological superiority was now afraid of its own surveillance systems. Mira Kim stared at the alien device spread across her laboratory table. The scanner unit had been captured during a raid by Dae Song's team in Daegu. Getting it to her mountain laboratory had required a dangerous journey through enemy territory, but the prize was worth the risk. "Be very careful with those components," she said to Hana Lee, who had traveled from Busan to help with the analysis. "This is our first chance to understand how their detection technology actually works." HFY device was roughly the size of a briefcase, with a smooth metallic surface covered in strange symbols. When they had first brought it inside, the scanner had been active, its sensors sweeping the room constantly. But after an hour of exposure to the charcoal-covered humans, it had simply stopped working. "Look at this," Hana said, pointing to a series of crystalline components inside the device. "These look like sensor arrays, but they're arranged in patterns I don't recognize. The aliens must process electromagnetic data very differently than we do." Using her basic equipment, Mira began mapping the scanner's internal systems. The technology was incredibly advanced, far beyond human understanding in most areas. But the fundamental principles were familiar: electromagnetic detection, signal processing, and pattern recognition. What surprised her was how specialized the systems were. The scanners were designed to detect specific types of life signatures with incredible precision. They could distinguish between different species, age groups, and even individual organisms. But this specialization came with a critical limitation. They're only programmed to recognize known patterns, Mira realized as she studied the data processing modules. The scanners work perfectly for life forms the Velkari have encountered before, but they can't adapt to new types of interference. This discovery explained why the charcoal mixture was so effective. Earth's carbon-based chemistry created electromagnetic signatures that the Velkari had never encountered during their conquest of other worlds. Their scanners were literally unable to process the interference patterns correctly, but the implications went much deeper. As Mira and Hana continued their analysis, they uncovered evidence of a profound weakness in Velkari civilization itself. "Look at these memory banks," Hana said, accessing data storage units within the scanner. "They contain detailed information about hundreds of different worlds and species, but all the scan patterns are pre-programmed. There's no learning algorithm, no adaptive capability. The aliens had become completely dependent on their technology to perceive and understand their environment. Over thousands of years of conquest, they had relied on scanners to identify threats, track prey, and navigate unfamiliar terrain. Their natural senses had atrophied through disuse. Even more revealing was the biological data they found in the device's memory banks. The Velkari homeworld apparently lacked carbon-based life forms entirely. Their evolution had occurred in a silicon-based ecosystem with completely different electromagnetic properties. "They literally cannot see us when we're covered in charcoal," Mira said with growing excitement. "It's not that their technology is failing, it's that they've never encountered materials like this before. To them, we're completely outside their understanding of what life should look like." This information was immediately shared with the Resistance Network. During that evening's radio conference, Mira explained her discoveries to ghost cell leaders across the region. "The aliens aren't just technologically dependent," she reported. "They're cognitively limited by their evolutionary background. They can't perceive threats that don't match their pre-programmed patterns. The implications transformed resistance strategy overnight. If the Velkari couldn't adapt to unexpected situations, then humans could exploit this weakness in numerous ways. The key was to present them with challenges that fell outside their experience. Young Bin Cho was the first to grasp the full potential. "We've been thinking too small," he said during the conference. "We don't need to hide from them. We need to confuse them completely." His idea was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of just avoiding alien detection, the ghost cells would actively manipulate it. They would create false electromagnetic signatures to fool the scanners, making it appear that humans were present in locations where there were none. Hana's industrial team began developing devices that could generate fake life signatures. Using components salvaged from alien technology, they built transmitters that mimicked human electromagnetic patterns. These could be placed in abandoned buildings or remote areas to draw alien attention away from real resistance activities. Meanwhile, Day Song's mechanics worked on the opposite problem, creating areas of complete electromagnetic silence. By understanding how the charcoal mixture absorbed scanner signals, they developed larger-scale applications. Entire buildings could be shielded, creating safe zones that were completely invisible to alien surveillance. The most sophisticated applications came from Young Bin's intelligence team. They learned to intercept and modify alien communication signals, feeding false information into Valkyrie command networks. Scanner reports could be altered to show human populations in incorrect locations or to hide the true extent of resistance activities. These new tactics were tested during small operations with remarkable success. Alien patrol units would respond to false signals, arriving at empty buildings while real ghost cell activities occurred elsewhere. Scanner drones would spend hours searching areas that contained nothing but signal generators. The psychological impact on Valkyrie forces was immediate and severe. Their confidence in their surveillance technology began to crumble as reports became increasingly unreliable. Some units reported detecting thousands of humans in areas that ground teams found empty. Others reported completely clear zones that were later revealed to contain active resistance cells. Their command structure is breaking down, reported June Park after monitoring alien communications from Seoul. Local commanders are questioning orders from higher levels because the intelligence doesn't match what they observe in the field. The confusion spread up through Valkyrie hierarchy. Regional commanders began demanding explanations from their subordinates. Equipment checks and system diagnostics found no technical problems, but the surveillance data remained contradictory and unreliable. Some alien units began operating without scanner support, relying on visual observation and patrol tactics. But their natural senses had been dulled by millennia of technological dependence. They missed obvious signs of human activity while responding to false alarms generated by resistance equipment. The breakthrough moment came during a major operation outside Seoul. The ghost cells had been planning to attack a Valkyrie processing center, but intelligence suggested heavy security around the facility. Instead of canceling the mission, they decided to test their new deception capabilities. Teams positioned false signal generators throughout the city, creating the appearance of massive human gatherings in multiple locations. Alien forces responded by dispatching patrol units to investigate each signal. While the enemy was distracted chasing phantoms, the real assault team infiltrated the processing center completely undetected. The rescue operation freed over 200 captured humans and captured significant amounts of alien equipment. More importantly, it demonstrated that the resistance could manipulate Valkyrie perceptions at will. The aliens were not just blind to charcoal-covered humans. They could be actively deceived by false information. Word of the success spread through resistance networks worldwide. Ghost cells in other countries began implementing similar tactics with equally impressive results. The Valkyrie occupation forces found themselves fighting an enemy that could appear and disappear at will, striking from unexpected directions while their surveillance systems reported contradictory information. But perhaps the most significant discovery came from analyzing captured alien personnel records. The Resistance had wondered why Valkyrie soldiers seemed so passive and confused when their technology failed. The answer was disturbing but encouraging. The aliens had not fought a real war in over 1,000 years. Their conquests had become routine operations where overwhelming technological superiority made actual combat unnecessary. Most Velkari soldiers had never experienced uncertainty, surprise, or tactical disadvantage. "They're not warriors," Mira explained during a strategy conference. "They're technicians. When their systems work perfectly, they're unstoppable. But when faced with the unexpected, they have no experience or training to fall back on." This revelation led to new resistance tactics focused on psychological warfare. Ghost cells began staging elaborate deceptions designed to maximize alien confusion and fear. False attacks, phantom signals, and contradictory intelligence reports created an atmosphere of uncertainty that Velkari forces were completely unprepared to handle. The effects cascaded through their command structure. Officers who had never questioned their surveillance data began doubting every report. Units that had operated with mechanical precision became hesitant and defensive. Some alien forces began withdrawing from advanced positions, consolidating around heavily fortified bases. Most importantly, the Velkari were beginning to lose confidence in their fundamental assumption of technological superiority. Day Song wiped the sweat from his forehead, leaving a dark smear across his charcoal-covered skin. Around him, his team of mechanics and factory workers moved through the abandoned warehouse like shadows. They had been preparing for this raid for 3 days, studying patrol patterns and planning every detail. The target was a Velkari supply depot on the outskirts of Daegu. Alien transports delivered equipment and supplies there twice a week. The facility was guarded by scanner drones and automated security systems, but no actual Velkari soldiers. The aliens trusted their technology completely. "Remember the plan," Day whispered to his team. "We take only what we can carry quickly. Food, medical supplies, and any technology we can understand. Don't touch anything that looks like weapons until we know how they work." His second-in-command, a woman named Kyung, who had worked in electronics manufacturing, nodded nervously. This was her first major operation with the ghost cells. Like most new recruits, she was amazed that humans could move unseen past alien detection systems. The warehouse was located in an industrial district that had been evacuated weeks ago. The streets were empty except for scanner drones that moved in predictable patterns. Day's team had mapped their routes carefully and identified safe windows for movement. They approached the depot through a drainage canal that ran beside the facility. The concrete tunnel was barely large enough for crawling, but it provided complete concealment from aerial surveillance. One by one, they emerged near the warehouse's loading dock. The building itself was surrounded by a barrier field that would detect any unauthorized entry. But the ghost cells had learned that the barriers worked by reading electromagnetic signatures, just like the scanners. The charcoal mixture that made them invisible to detection also allowed them to pass through security fields unnoticed. Dai stepped through the shimmering barrier first. The energy field tingled against his skin but didn't react to his presence. Behind him, his team followed one by one, disappearing through alien security like ghosts walking through walls. Inside the warehouse, they found rows of storage containers filled with alien supplies. Most items were incomprehensible. strange. Devices with unknown purposes and materials that felt wrong to human touch. But scattered among the alien equipment were things they could use: food concentrates, medical equipment, and communication devices. They worked quickly and quietly, filling backpacks with useful supplies. Kyung found a container of small devices that looked like earpieces. When she examined one closely, it activated and began translating alien text into Korean. The items were translation units that the Velkari used to communicate with captured humans. "These could be valuable," she whispered to Day. "If we can figure out how they work, we might be able to understand alien communications." Meanwhile, across the city, young Bin Cho was leading his own operation. At 18 years old, he was the youngest ghost cell leader, but his understanding of urban environments made him incredibly effective at moving unseen through occupied territory. His team consisted mostly of students and teachers from his high school. They had been hiding in the school's basement since the invasion, but the charcoal technique had transformed them from frightened victims into capable resistance fighters. Their mission was intelligence gathering. Using the translation devices that Day's team had captured the previous week, they were attempting to intercept and decode alien communications. Young Bin had positioned his people at key locations around the city where they could monitor radio traffic without being detected. "The aliens are reporting more supply problems," reported Min, a computer science student who had become their communications expert. "They're confused because their scanners show no human activity, but their losses are increasing." Young Bin smiled grimly. The ghost cells were becoming more effective with each operation. What had started as desperate survival tactics was evolving into coordinated resistance warfare. The aliens' confidence in their technology was becoming their greatest weakness. In another part of the city, a team led by a former police officer named Soot was conducting a rescue operation. They had identified a processing center where captured humans were being held before transport to alien facilities. The building was heavily monitored, but the ghost cells had learned to exploit the blind spots in Velkari surveillance. The rescue team moved through the city's storm drain system, emerging directly beneath the processing center. The building's basement connected to the drainage tunnels, allowing them to access the facility without passing through any surface checkpoints. Inside, they found dozens of humans held in temporary holding cells. Most were weak and frightened, but alive. The rescue team quickly explained the charcoal technique and began applying the mixture to the prisoners. Within minutes, the captured humans became invisible to alien scanners. "Follow us and stay quiet," Sook instructed as they led the rescued humans back through the drainage tunnels. "You're free now, but we need to get you to a safe location where you can join the resistance." These successful operations were being repeated across the region. Ghost cells in Busan, Seoul, Incheon, and other cities were conducting similar raids and rescues. Each victory freed more humans and captured more alien supplies, strengthening the resistance network. The coordination was managed through the radio network that June Park had established in Seoul. Multiple times each day, ghost cell leaders from different cities would report their activities and share intelligence. Mira Kim continued to provide scientific guidance from her mountain laboratory, while Hana Lee used her industrial expertise to help teams modify and improve captured alien technology. "We're starting to hurt them," Hana reported during one of their evening radio conferences. "My team has been monitoring alien supply chains and they're showing signs of disruption. They're having to increase security and change routes because of our activities." But the resistance leaders knew they were still fighting a much larger and more advanced enemy. The Velkari Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds with overwhelming force. The ghost cells were causing problems, but they needed to do much more to seriously threaten the occupation. That breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Young Bin's intelligence gathering had revealed important information about Velkari psychology and tactics. By studying intercepted communications, his team learned that the aliens had a critical vulnerability. They've never encountered invisible enemies before, Young Bin explained during a major strategy conference that included all the regional leaders. Their entire military doctrine is based on perfect surveillance and overwhelming technological superiority. They don't know how to fight opponents they can't detect. This revelation led to new tactical approaches. Instead of just avoiding alien forces, the ghost cells began actively hunting them. Small teams would track scanner drones and destroy them with improvised weapons. Larger groups would ambush alien patrol units, appearing from nowhere to attack, and then vanishing again. The psychological impact on the Velkari forces was significant. Soldiers who had never experienced combat uncertainty began reporting equipment malfunctions and phantom attacks. Some units requested additional support or refused to patrol certain areas. "Their commanders are losing confidence in their own people," Day reported, after monitoring alien communications for several days. "They're starting to suspect sabotage from within their own ranks because they can't believe humans could be responsible." This confusion created opportunities for larger operations. The ghost cells began planning coordinated attacks on major alien facilities. Instead of small raids for supplies, they started targeting communication centers, transport hubs, and command facilities. The most ambitious operation was planned for a major Velkari base outside Seoul. Intelligence suggested that the facility contained hundreds of captured humans and served as a regional command center. Taking it would free many prisoners and deal a serious blow to alien operations in the area. The attack required coordination between multiple ghost cells from different cities. Teams would approach from various directions, creating simultaneous diversions while the main assault force infiltrated the base itself. It was complex and dangerous, but success would prove that humans could challenge Velkari control directly. They prepared for the operation. The resistance leaders reflected on how much had changed since the invasion. 3 weeks ago, humanity had seemed helpless against alien technology. Now they were planning to attack one of the enemy's major strongholds. The transformation had come from understanding a simple scientific principle. Carbon-based materials could interfere with electromagnetic detection systems. But the real power had come from human courage, ingenuity, and determination to fight back against impossible odds. Young Bin looked at the maps and intelligence reports spread across his makeshift command table. The former high school student had become a military strategist, coordinating operations across multiple cities. Around him, teachers and students worked alongside mechanics, soldiers, and factory workers, all united by their refusal to accept defeat. The ghost cells had grown from scattered survivors into an organized resistance movement. They had learned to use alien technology against its creators and exploit weaknesses that an empire of conquerors had never encountered before. June Park crouched in the abandoned subway tunnel beneath Seoul, mixing charcoal powder with wood ash by flashlight. His hands shook slightly as he followed Mira's instructions. Around him, 12 other survivors watched nervously. They had been hiding in the underground tunnels for a week, constantly moving to avoid alien patrols. "Are you sure this will work?" whispered a young woman named Soon. She had escaped from a processing center 3 days ago and still bore the marks where alien restraints had held her. June tested the mixture on his arm first. The black paste spread easily across his skin, creating a dark coating that absorbed the flashlight beam. Dr. Kim's radio instructions were very detailed, he said. She tested this herself. Above them, they could hear the familiar humming of scanner drones moving through the empty city streets. Seoul had become a ghost town. Most humans had been captured and transported to alien facilities. Only small groups like June's remained, hidden in the underground spaces. June had been a Special Forces soldier before the invasion. He knew how to move quietly, find food and water, and keep people alive in difficult situations. But military training meant nothing against enemies, who could track your exact location from kilometers away. The charcoal mixture was their first real chance to fight back. One by one, the survivors covered themselves with the dark paste. They smeared it on their faces, hands, and clothes. The mixture had a gritty texture and smelled like burnt wood, but it dried quickly and stayed in place. "Remember," June said as they prepared to leave the tunnel, "move slowly and stay in shadows. The charcoal helps with their scanners, but we still need to be careful about visual detection." They climbed through a maintenance access that led to a department store basement. The building above was empty, its windows dark and doors sealed by alien security devices. But the basement connected to a network of service tunnels that ran throughout the city center. As they moved through the underground passages, scanner drones passed overhead repeatedly. The blue scanning lights swept the ground above them, but the machines showed no interest in their location. The charcoal mixture was working perfectly. Their destination was a communication center in the Gangnam district. Before the invasion, the facility had been used by emergency services. Now it was abandoned, but its radio equipment might still function. June hoped to contact other survivor groups and share the charcoal technique more widely. The journey took 6 hours of careful movement through subway tunnels, sewer systems, and building basements. Twice they encountered alien patrol units on the surface, but remained undetected. The soldiers moved in formation, their weapons ready, but their scanners showed empty streets. The communications center was located 3 floors below a government building. June's team accessed it through a maintenance tunnel that connected to the building's foundation. Inside, they found banks of radio equipment and computer terminals, most still powered by emergency generators. June had basic training in military communications, but the civilian equipment was different. Fortunately, Soon had worked as a technician before the invasion. She quickly identified the most powerful radio transmitters and began testing frequencies. "I'm getting signals," she reported after an hour of work. "Weak transmissions from Busan, Daegu, and Incheon. There are other survivors out there." The first voice they contacted was Hana Lee in Busan. She was hiding in an industrial complex with about 20 other people. Her group had tried the charcoal technique and confirmed it worked, but they needed more detailed instructions for making the mixture in large quantities. "We found activated charcoal at a water treatment plant," Hana reported. "But we need to know how much ash to add and how often to reapply the coating." June relayed Mira's original instructions, but also shared improvements his group had discovered. The mixture worked better when applied in thin, even layers. It needed to be reapplied every 12 hours to maintain effectiveness. Adding a small amount of clay helped it stick to skin and clothing better. Over the next several hours, more voices joined their radio network. Dae Song contacted them from Daegu, where he was leading a group of mechanics and factory workers. Young Bin Cho called from a high school in Suwon, where students and teachers were hiding in the basement. Each group shared information about local conditions and resources. They reported alien patrol patterns, identified safe meeting locations, and coordinated supply runs. Most importantly, they spread knowledge about the charcoal mixture to survivors who hadn't heard about it yet. The network grew rapidly as word spread through underground channels. People who had been isolated and afraid suddenly had hope and communication with others. Small resistance cells began forming in cities across South Korea and beyond. Mira's voice remained the central hub of the network. From her mountain laboratory, she provided technical guidance and coordinated information between different groups. Her scientific knowledge helped other survivors improve the charcoal mixture and understand why it worked. The alien scanners read electromagnetic signatures, Mira explained during one of their daily radio conferences. Carbon-based materials absorb and scatter these signals. We're not invisible, but we're creating enough interference to confuse their detection systems. This knowledge led to new innovations. Hana's group in Busan discovered that mixing charcoal with certain metallic powders enhanced its effectiveness. Dae's mechanics found that vehicle exhaust soot worked almost as well as activated charcoal. Young Bin's students learned that burnt paper ash could be substituted when other materials weren't available. The resistance cells also began sharing intelligence about alien operations. They observed scanner drone patrol routes, identified vulnerable supply convoys, and mapped the locations of processing centers where captured humans were being held. "The aliens have a major facility outside Seoul," June reported after a reconnaissance mission. "Hundreds of humans are being held there. If we coordinate ourselves, we might be able to mount a rescue operation. But such operations required careful planning and better equipment." The ghost cells were growing in number, but they lacked weapons, vehicles, and military supplies. They needed to find ways to obtain these resources without being detected. Dae's mechanical skills proved valuable for this challenge. His team began raiding abandoned military depots and police stations. recovering weapons and equipment that the aliens had overlooked. The charcoal camouflage allowed them to move unseen past security systems that relied on the Velkari detection technology. Young Bin's group focused on information gathering. Using their knowledge of local computer networks, they hacked into systems that the aliens were using to coordinate their operations. They discovered transport schedules, guard rotations, and facility layouts that could help plan rescue missions. Meanwhile, Hana's industrial expertise helped the resistance cells improve their equipment and supplies. Her team converted abandoned factories into hidden workshops where they manufactured better versions of the charcoal mixture and modified captured alien technology. As the network expanded beyond South Korea, they made contact with survivors in Japan, China, and other countries. Each region had discovered similar techniques for avoiding alien detection, but the Korean network's systematic approach and scientific foundation made it particularly effective. The aliens began to notice problems with their occupation operations. Supply convoys went missing, communication facilities were sabotaged, and patrol units reported equipment malfunctions. But their scanners showed no signs of human activity in these areas. The Velkari commanders were confused and frustrated. From their perspective, the primitive humans had been completely defeated and contained. Their perfect surveillance technology showed empty cities and inactive resistance. Yet somehow, their operations were being disrupted by invisible enemies. The ghost cells took advantage of this confusion. They stepped up their activities knowing that the aliens couldn't track or predict their movements. Rescue operations freed hundreds of captured humans. Sabotage missions disrupted alien supply lines and communication networks. Most importantly, the network continued to grow. Every freed human learned the charcoal technique and joined a ghost cell. Every successful operation proved that resistance was possible and encouraged others to fight back. June looked around the communication center where his team had established their base of operations. The room was filled with maps, radio equipment, and intelligence reports. Charts on the walls tracked ghost cell activities across the region. It looked like a military command center, which in many ways it had become. 3 weeks ago, he had been hiding in subway tunnels with a handful of terrified survivors. Now he was coordinating resistance operations across multiple countries. The transformation was remarkable, and it had all started with a simple discovery by Dr. Mira Kim. The charcoal mixture had given humanity more than camouflage. It had given them hope, organization, and the confidence to fight back against impossible odds. The ghost cells were becoming a real threat to the Velkari occupation, and the aliens didn't even know it yet.